Hey everyone. This is by far the most frustrating situation of all time. Well, maybe not all time. God. So, context, I've been running like a bat out of hell, trying to get my last 48 hours under control before I head off for the break. Today I was in ultra regiment mode, so I had a bunch of clients I had to see across the southeast. And I thought I would squeeze a quick visit in at the dojo to get an episode, just a solo episode out. It's been months. I don't remember when the last one was that I'd done. Just me. And I've come in thinking, boom, bam, get in, get out. I was going to just do it from my office. I mean, because I can record from there anyway. But I thought, nah, authenticity. I'll make use of the studio, seeing as I don't get down here that often. And, actually do the final closeout for the year, from here. Of course, I get here, mouse isn't working for some stupid reason. I've torn apart the studio filing cabinet, remote controls, everything, trying to find some AA batteries. I've got like mountains. I've got like a swag full of them back at home. But of course, I don't have any here. And I keep saying I'm going to replace the keyboard and mouse, and I don't. And these keyboard and mouse are just leftovers from like another studio or another office, and God knows what. And me, the idiot, instead of spending $20-$30 to just replace all this crap, I've hung on to it. Thank God it's not actually a client in here. It's just me wasting my own time. But I just spent about half an hour trying to get it to work. Somehow I did. I used a combo of batteries salvaged from the floor, the dumpsters outside, and I don't know, the railway tracks. It's working for now. I'm just going to get it done and get out of here. So effectively, coming here and trying to save half an hour out of my day, I've ended up wasting at least 35-40 minutes of my time. Anyway, there was a number of reasons why I wanted to get the solo one done before the end of the year. First and foremost, I wanted to thank everyone for listening throughout the year. I look back, we hit on par, I think, with the year before on a number of episodes. Pretty close, just fell short of what we've done. Definitely been more active than the previous year before that, obviously with COVID and everything. But I would have liked to have done a few more episodes. I know I've got one that's sitting unedited just in the can. I was hoping to get it done so I could have released it while I was away, but just time won't allow it, basically. There's a number of guests that I've had on the back burner trying to get in, and I just haven't been able to tee it up. I mean, it just gets really hard sometimes with people's schedules and all that sort of stuff. But looking back, like reflecting at the year that's been, it's been great. Done a lot of episodes, talked to a whole lot of different people, managed to establish another brand within the podcast, which is hilarious given that there's 4 people that listen to this and the guests outweigh the number of people that in the audience. But it's been funny, establishing obviously the midweek rub with George, Andrew, and Malaka. I don't even know if he listens to these, so it's going to be funny if he does actually listen to them and then cracks a sound with me. But I don't care. I can do what I want. Just on that, thanking everyone for just getting behind us again for another year. It blows my mind, the fact that people tune in and listen to this rabble. It's really cool to look back and just see like the established sort of sub-tiers of what this podcast has become. Obviously, given, you've got low-hanging fruit, you've got the midweek rub. There's a few other guests that used to be regulars back in the day that I'd love to have back on for regular things, but, life sort of just puts things in your way and just makes things hard, and people are just preoccupied with stuff, so I haven't actually revisited it. It's hard to say. Again, I still keep in touch with pretty much everyone that's been a part of this. But definitely, I definitely want to open the doors up for 2025. I want to get a lot more people coming through here. I want to actively try and make more of an effort to get in here. Even if it's for the midweek rub or low-hanging fruit or just solo episodes or whatever, I definitely want to spend more time in here. I only sort of took it in stock this last week because I've come in here a bit more often than not, especially if I'm in the areas and I just need to take time out, get the bottle of water from the fridge, do something, go to the bathroom, whatever, just get a bit of shade from the heat. And it is actually a really cool spot. The fact that it burns a hole in my pocket every month doesn't help. And it sort of gets me a bit annoyed because, I don't own this joint. But at the same time, we've been really lucky to have this place. And, on that, thank you to everyone who's ever bought us a coffee and helped us support us. Even, your $10 goes a long way. It just goes to show that there are people out there that are willing to get behind your brand and help you, and support you and all that sort of stuff. The last month or so, 2 months, I've been making an active decision to stop following what's in the news. Someone had reached out, when Trump got elected, someone had reached out, or just before Trump got elected, I can't remember. Someone reached out asking to come on and discuss the actual situation in America and how, as a collective, we were either misinformed or miseducated, and et cetera, on the Trump election, Trump's policies, whatever. And my answer to them was pretty much what I've been saying the last 2 months: is I don't care. I've actively been following American politics probably since 2011. 2011, I started getting a bit of a healthy interest in American politics and just politics in general. When Trump was running the first time, I really got on board. And that's because it was hard not to, because it was such a thing out of left field, like just out of the box that no one was expecting to that degree. I mean, not even Trump himself. And it dominated the headlines, it dominated space where I would normally sort of watch. So things like, late night TV, I mean, they're mostly satirical commentators, they're not really political commentators, but, even from like the Young Turks, CNN, NBC, whatever it is, wherever you get your news, I actively started following it a lot more. And if you're a fan of this podcast, especially if you've been listening since the start, you'd know that Trump and American politics has dominated a lot of the episodes over the last 8 years. I was going haywire following the elections this year. And once it was done, I just said, nah. I basically watched everyone's reaction to it in the first 48 hours. And then I just said, no more. I'm done. It's exhausting, absolutely exhausting. And I've lost interest in it completely. And I don't care. This year has been one for a lot of different things for me, a lot of growth, a lot of change. Life, again, puts things in your way, forces you to circumnavigate, forces you to come back, diversify, rebrand, put on different hats, put on different masks, whatever it is. And it's been exhausting. People have always said to me that I work too hard or I work too much, and I probably do. At the same time, I've managed to achieve a lot of stuff that I never took for granted. I just thought it was the norm. But then, when I look back at my last couple of years and everything that I've actually done, I've taken it in stride, not because I'm the most humble guy in the world, but just because I value what I have and I appreciate everything I have, but I just thought this is what everyone does. And so I got used to people saying that I'm always busy, I'm always doing things, I'm working too hard, working too much, et cetera, et cetera. This is the first year where I've actually felt it take its toll. And not because I'm turning 40, like it's nothing like that, There is no existential crisis as John has managed to not even insinuate, he outright said it. It's got nothing to do with that. It's taken its toll because over the last 4 years, people that know me personally would know what I've gone through the last 4 years on a personal front. I'm extremely honest on this pod, and I try to be, especially when talking about my opinion and where I sit on certain issues. Regarding my personal life, I don't put everything out on the table, mostly to protect other people. In the past, I've said a few things, been involved in a few things where people close to me were targeted. So I learnt my lesson very early on. This is going back to 2004, So for 20 years ago, I learnt the lesson of some anonymity and just keeping some things off the table. And so on top of that, and just going through the daily grind and everything else, I think the biggest difference for me this year was the fact that it didn't matter how hard I worked, it just wasn't enough to cover the bases. I have no problem working 20 hours a day if I know I'm covering the bases and I'm making that bottom line and I'm making ends meet. This is the first year where doing that wasn't enough. And it's not my fault. I doubled down on a few investments, doubled down on myself, doubled down on everything I want for myself, and no one can predict the future. So 2 industries that I'm involved in both took a hit as a general, across the market sort of thing. And so when you're staring down the barrel, and you've lost 20%, 30% of your income, expected income, for the next 6 months, it changes everything, So where the ends were meeting comfortably, like not comfortably, but they were meeting. I could expect to meet my ends. So then I didn't have this stress. So from going from that to worrying about when the next bill is going to come, when the next, overdue notice is going to come, and still putting in the same hours and slog, it takes its toll. I've mentioned it before. Obviously when you stress, anxiety, insomnia, cortisol spikes, it keeps you up in the middle of the night so you don't sleep, and then it becomes a toxic cycle. So if you don't sleep, you're fatigued, your metabolism slows down, so you gain weight. You're also snacking more in order to stay awake and have more energy for the day, making you more lethargic, etc., etc. And that's pretty much what's happened with me. I've done all the tests. I'm proactive with my health, something that I was pretty complacent about years ago. And I'm trying not to do that now. I'm trying to put myself as having some sort of interest in my own personal health. And also I'd say that it's not necessarily I need to slow down. I just need to figure out how to manage things. And one thing I did was cut out following what's going on in the States, following what's going on overseas. It's just not interesting anymore. One thing I'm doing is listening to music a lot more, reinvesting in music. When I get in the car, I've got music playing. No longer watching, US politics, no longer watching some true crime shit, whatever, just looking for white noise in the background. I'm actively just putting on the music again. And that's been really refreshing. It's amazing how much I used to just relish getting in my car and listening to tunes and things like that. So I've just got to start organically. Of course, pharmaceuticals are going to have a play in it, but we'll see how far that goes. It's just hard. So I'm actively going to try and just, double down and go hard in on everything that actually used to bring me really basic, just forms of joy. I've just got to turn this again before it turns into full-blown depression or something. But no, it's good. It's actually good. It's sort of weird. The other day, I was sitting in my apartment. I had an hour free or something. I can't remember what I was doing. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to have a drink. I haven't had a drink in ages, just to unwind. So I poured a scotch and I just sat on the balcony. I was just staring out at the buildings that surround me. And it was sort of one of those, self-awareness moments. I'm just like, fuck me, how much time has changed. I remember in 2013 when I first moved into my place in Noble. I remember cleaning up, getting everything in order, at the end of the night. And my reward to myself on so many nights was just having a White Russian and putting on a movie or something and just sitting there watching TV. And it was a movie. It was TV. And I would just have a White Russian and just sit there with my feet up on the coffee table, because it was mine. And I still remember being absolutely stoked. I remember that like it was yesterday. It was 11 years ago, nearly 12. And I used to do that for the first year. I did that really, really often. And it was awesome. And now I'm sort of, I come into my house, I trash it, and I leave. I go straight to the office or I move along. One thing that was a really sort of smart move was moving my office from my second bedroom, downsizing and moving it to an external office, which means I have to switch off when I get home. Only problem is I've overextended my days now. It's not always, but it sort of shoots you in the foot a bit because you end up spending more time at the office and less at home. But it has created some balance. So the only problem is I'd get home and then I'd be too exhausted to do anything. I'd binge watch, white noise again, always negative shit. I'm like, what am I doing? At least, when I had the computer there, if I was being productive because I'd be doing work or I'd be working on music or I'd be doing something half productive. And now I'm just that tired where I'm just getting home and falling asleep on the couch for an hour or two. And yeah, I just sort of said, you know what, I need to go back to basics and start doing the little things again that sort of made me happy. Obviously, things are going to change as you get older and diversify and grow and all that sort of thing. But And I'm trying not to drink any alcohol these days, as little as alcohol as possible. But just sitting there and just taking it all in, it's sort of weird. And that's why it's always weird coming back to, the studio, because it is only a K from where I grew up. So it's like coming back to the trap house. This year's been one for milestones. And again, not just because I'm turning 40 or whatever, but there's just a lot of things that have been ticked off that have crossed, the line and things like that. And it's just, on reflection, it's just amazing, like looking back at it. The whole thing this year, I was going through Clayton, I don't know, last week before, I can't remember what it was. I was going down the road, I've been down a million times, not far from my mum's, and I was driving by a warehouse, and something triggered in the back of my head. I'm like, why am I looking at this warehouse as I was driving by? Then I realized it was one of the first places I went to for employment once I'd left that old job that I'd been in for 9 years. And I remember specifically being in that warehouse doing the induction, because I'd gotten the role. It was just a casual role, doing warehousing, picking, packing, whatever the hell it was. And I was doing the induction. And I remember just looking around, looking at the racks and thinking, fuck, I'm going back to a dark, dingy warehouse. No lighting, no windows, just on a fork. And I remember feeling dread, like I can't do this. And thank God, when I was in that induction, I actually had a job offer come through that very second that I'd applied for. And I remember telling the recruitment officers doing the induction, all that, one of which I'd had a working relationship with previously. I remember saying, I'm sorry, guys, but I just got a job offer for this, this, and that. So I'm not going to need this job. And they both patted me on the back, said, oh, congratulations, mate, like blah, blah, blah. It's best thing ever. And that was 2019. And I'm driving through the same spot 5 years later, and I'm just thinking back how much time has passed and how much shit has changed. In those 5 years, we went through COVID, full lockdowns, personal life has changed significantly. Professional life, I've changed jobs once, twice, 3 times since then. At different roles, different companies. And I look back and think, Jesus, how have I crammed that much into the last 5 years? Especially going through lockdowns, we seemingly lost a year and a half. And then you get people that nothing has changed. They're still in the same company, same job, same role, same wage. Maybe had added an extra kid or a bedroom to their house. And it's just weird how, for some people, it's just so volatile and so unpredictable. And for some people, it's just set in stone. Whew. Fuck. Getting excited just talking about this shit. 2024 was sort of I feel the tipping point for a lot of people with a lot of things, especially culturally, social norms, all this sort of thing. I mean, we harp on about it, especially with the low-hanging fruit. We harp on about DEI and, agenda and all that sort of thing. And I think it's finally coming to a head where, people are just sick of narrative-driven, agenda-driven shit, just generally. I don't want to get it twisted. We talk a lot about that sort of stuff, and it's got nothing to do with equality. Equality of opportunity, definitely. Quality of outcome, no. And we've gone over it, so there's no need for me to go into it. I don't really want to get doxxed right now for something I'm just saying off the cuff at the end of the day when I'm exhausted after a year wrap. But, I think about a lot of things that we've just normalized. Someone said to me the other day, they were talking about OnlyFans models, and I pulled them up. They were a teenager that was saying this. And I thought, hang on, man. And this is what I said. Okay, they're not OnlyFans models. They're sex workers. And they sort of looked at me and laughed and said, yeah, I guess you're right. I said, well, no. And I'm not shaming sex workers. I've had a sex worker on here, on this podcast. It's not about shaming sex workers, but the fact that we've normalized sex work to the degree where it's celebrated and advertised. I mean, we've talked about it before. You get on the news, you hit up news.com.au, whatever rag, there's always going to be an article about an influencer or an OnlyFans model. And it's always about women. There's almost never talk about, OnlyFans models that are men, because they're far and few compared to the women. But the fact that it's been celebrated and normalized, it's no longer a taboo subject to the point where it's literally there front and center. And when you look at terms like influencers, you know, it's like, who are you influencing? Who the fuck were you to become an influencer? No one. You did some nudes on the internet, you know? You appeared on a reality show, which is as far removed from reality as possible. And I thought, nah, there are no OnlyFans models. They're just sex workers on the internet that have managed to monetize something completely on their own. As opposed to back in the day when you'd pay $5.95 a minute to call up a sex line and listen to someone talk dirty to you. You know, I don't see those ads anymore because it's just been monetized in a different way. You know, now we've normalized it. Times, sure, but like, fuck off.
And therein lies the crux. You've got influencers bred from reality shows. You've got Olympian athletes with seemingly no talent, no form of exceptionalism, let alone God-given, you know, awe-inspiring talent. You've got people imitating oral sex in a 9-second soundbite and then going on to amass great fortune and wealth in minutes. You've got child worship at an all-time high, where people like the Rizzler, or whatever the hell that little shit's name is, in New York, just, it's disgusting. It's seriously disgusting. Politicians being bred from, you know, TV shows and rubbish, when you've got a president-elect that on record has said the sound of windmills cause cancer, you can inject bleach to cure COVID, refer to Hannibal Lecter like he's a real person, suggest nuking hurricanes will change their trajectory, and not understanding that asylum seekers aren't from insane asylums. When all this happens, you know we're fucked. And there's no point following any of this shit en masse.
It's insane. That's just me. I refuse to lay down and just accept that. And I thought about the term high-class escort. Someone called someone a high-class escort, and that's how they were an influencer as well. And I remember saying, okay, high-class escorts don't exist. They're just expensive. There's nothing classy about a high-class escort. She's just expensive. That is the difference. It's still an escort. They're still a sex worker. And chances are high-class escorts are probably doing less work than sex workers found on the street. They're really taking the piss. Yeah, it's like plus-size models. There are no plus-size models. They're just models. That's it. We're constantly looking for labels to either further validate someone or whatever. It's like, fuck off, man. We are all human beings at the end of the day. You know, just because you learned how to grift on a different level and trade something else up beyond your dignity as well, that's not my fucking problem. I don't know. I think people are starting to get angry as well just because of the economy and everything else. And that really is the funniest thing. I was in Woolies the other day. I was standing at the conveyor. I had my, 4 pieces, counting out my shekels. And the dude in front of me was this old, angry man. Like, that's the best way I could describe him. And he just looked angry. And I can't remember what he said. There was a woman in front of him getting served, and he was standing next to her. And the woman in front of him looked really out of place. I still remember because she was wearing like a bowler cap and like this weird like get up. It looked more like she was coming from like a race course in the early 90s. Like it was a really strange get up. And I was just, it's 4:00 on a Tuesday afternoon or whatever at your local Woolies. So it was really out of place. But yeah, it is what it is. And we're just standing there, and this old bloke was like started barking orders because the woman in front of him finished up and she sort of took her time to put her personal effects back into the shopping bags and sort of scoop everything up. So this old dude was barking orders. First when I got there, he was like stretched out in some weird, he looked like he had a Larry David vibe, but like a less charming, non-funny version of Larry David, where he just looked angry and just obnoxiously taking up way too much space. Like he was doing some sort of stretch on across the conveyor belt. And I'm standing there like, what are you doing, man? This isn't a yoga mat. Like, relax. And I sort of stayed out of his way and I just kept my mouth shut. And when he got to the front, he started barking orders at the guy at the cashier. He's saying something like, don't bag that, put that in a separate bag. I'm paying. Like, I can't remember what he was saying, but it was something to that effect. Yeah. And the woman next to him sort of looked at me, then looked at him, and was just sizing him up and eyeing him off. And she actually said what I was thinking. And out loud, she said, why are you so grumpy, you miserable old fuck? And I was just glad in that moment that it wasn't me that was just thinking it and I was wrong. Because he generally was like, just looked miserable and angry. I just wish I could remember what it was that he was saying. But it was really just like he was, playing the principal. And it was just, do this, so that, man. And it's just like, why are you so fucking miserable? Oh, God. I don't know. It made me laugh in the moment. I don't know. It's strange. Like, I talk a lot about watching people, and giving people the benefit of the doubt. But then sometimes you can just draw the line and say, you're just a cunt. Or you're just miserable for no reason. You live in a country where bombs aren't falling out of the sky. You don't turn the tap water on and pray to God that it's, not brown. Or, you've got electricity running 24/7 without, any interruptions. You can have your hard day. You can have a hard time. You can be going through something. I get it. But then, when you see the same people for 3 years straight at the conveyor belt, at the Woolies, and they've got the same miserable scowl, it's just like, dude, I haven't got time for your shit. The world doesn't care. Just move along. I don't know. I know I'm just rambling right now. I'm actually thinking it's already getting late. I've got a meeting in about 3 hours. And I have no idea how I'm going to get this day done. There's so much to get through. Jesus Christ. Oh, yeah, there's one more thing I need to talk about. The rebranding. Hope to God that you've actually sat through this and gone to this part, because this is probably the most important part out of everything I've said today. The rebranding. The Duke Leverage Show. So this came about, must have been, 2 months ago now, when I first sort of thought about it. Someone had asked me about the podcast. I was somewhere socially. I can't remember how it happened, but I was going into Spotify to send the link to someone. So, copy the link, send it across. And when I went in to select it, from my Spotify account, I've just seen Trainspotter's podcast, A League of His Own. And right away, that annoyed me. I write copy. I write content for one of my side sort of things. And just seeing Trainspotter's podcast, A League of His Own, Trainspotters in itself refer to a collective, as in more than one. A League of His Own referred to one single person. That automatically annoyed me. I'm like, why is that? Well, because Trainspotters came from Trainspotting, as well as the logo, clearly, drew inspiration from Trainspotting. Never hid that. And I would have explained this in 2021 when I did the rebrand. So Trainspotting, for me, was one of my favorite books. It's an Irvin Welsh novel, and the movie itself is fucking brilliant. When you look up the meaning of the word Trainspotting, one of the meanings for it is someone who has a lot of knowledge about a niche subject that many people wouldn't know about, probably have any interest in. And I felt that really reflected what this podcast was, especially at that time. It was before I'd really branched out and started having different people on and exploring people's stories and things like that. So for me, that really spoke volumes, and it was time for a rebrand. And I thought that was a safe bet, right? It was easy, it was there, and I ran with it. The problem is that it's already an established IP. So, I'd go to parties or I'd talk to people and they'd be like, what's the podcast, this and that. And then they'd get stuck on the name and be like, so what is it? Is it about the movie? Like, do you discuss trains? Like, it was always this sort of thing that I'd have to explain the explanation. But at the time, it was just a quick, easy, safe bet. So after I got triggered, a month or two ago, whenever it was, and I said, you know what? Like, that's wrong. Like, I need to do something. It's time for a rebrand. And, what could I do? And then I was staring at the Duke Leverage mascot, like the mascot. I'm like, well, it's all about us hiding behind him. It's like Mad Magazine. I grew up, as a kid in the 80s and 90s, and I read Mad Magazine, Cracked. The Simpsons was all about Bart as a token character. Like, everything I had, like Mad Magazine had Alfred E. Newman. Everything always had like a central figure to hide behind. And that's what Duke Leverage became. I had the idea to call this the Duke Leverage Show when I rebranded in 2021, and I didn't. Mostly because I didn't have the nerve or the balls to do it, because I felt like the IP, like the name itself, was still too tied to Nick and Johnny, from the original, from the start, of this thing. And I felt like I wasn't betraying anyone, but I just felt like it was too close connected to that, and I wasn't ready to do that. I thought I needed to do something new. But that's just me sort of doing the thing of tiptoeing around people and just being wary of. But then, when I looked at it again and I thought, well, I'm staring at this kid's face that I've created. I created the mascot, the actual visual of him. I did it using a friend of mine's photo from when they were a kid. And I just took that, added the facial hair, added the Band-Aid, added the gold tooth, and I ran with it since 2017. So the name Duke Leverage has existed since day dot. And I created that as well. So the IP itself is mine. I've done everything to establish it. I've done everything to update it as it went. And using AI and a bit more of my sort of graphics ability and all that sort of stuff, I managed to fine-tune the mascot into, Duke Leverage as he is right now. And I think he's at his prime. I think it's at his peak. It's the cleanest looking logo. It looks polished. He's got 100 expressions. He's at his cheekiest, And for me, having that central mascot was huge because, like I said, I grew up reading Mad magazines, or you've got Bart Simpson and you've got Beavis and Butthead, and you've got all these central characters, mascots. Even if Mike Judge, the guy that created Beavis and Butthead, he also did Idiocracy, which is huge right now as it parallels with today's society, and he did Office Space as well, which was huge in regards to big corporations and how they handle people and all that sort of thing. Yeah, they always hid behind avatars. They had avatars that were extensions of their own personalities and people they knew and things like that, Mike Judge is a brilliant voiceover artist who created all those IPs. He, when you ask him about his characters and where he got the inspiration from, they're all people that he had in his life, teachers and uncles and whatever it was. So for me, having Duke Leverage is huge. I love it because it's just an extension of my personality, based on and also on the fact that, the original photo is based on one of my good friends. It always makes me laugh that he's just got this personality of his own now in regards to I used to get asked, who is this dude? I always get asked about it, especially when I'm wearing the tee or, someone sees a sticker on my phone. So for me, it's a big deal. And I felt that this podcast has evolved to the point where it deserves its own IP and it's got its own personality. Hopefully, with the new rebrand, I asked a bunch of people. Obviously, I asked for opinions on all this before I obviously went ahead and pulled the trigger on it. And the more I sort of put it together, the more I worked on the logo, the more I worked on the new mascot and everything else, everyone was sort of on board with it. Said, I love it. Perfect. Your reasoning's perfect behind it. And it's true to the IP and the context and the history and everything. So, and it's all organic. It all organically evolved and it's long running. Like I said, the name Duke Leverage has been there since 2016. The face of Duke Leverage came from 2017, less than a year later. I think we may have just closed out the first season or just before the first season had closed out. Something like that. But I definitely have Duke Leverage, not in the first season's mural that I did of The Last Supper, but definitely in the second season. So for me, yeah, it's a big deal. And I feel it's something that people can sort of promote and push without having to explain anything. It's all pretty self-explanatory. I'm working on a website. I plan to have a website up just so it can have its own, home, I guess, other than the Linktree page and obviously Spotify, SoundCloud and everything else. There's going to be merch. I mean, there already is merch, but I feel now with its own IP, it's going to be a lot easier to push. Again, anyone that's ever bought us a coffee, I've sent out mugs to whoever I can, whoever wants to accept one. If you're after any form of merch for this podcast, please just let me know, especially if you've bought us a coffee or something like that, because I owe you and I'm happy to shell out for a mug, a tea, some stickers, whatever it is. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that, people pay $10 a month to subscribe to Netflix or something. And that's, round the clock content, constantly updating, blockbuster movies, series, international movies, whatever. We barely get to have content in this podcast anymore just because, life and all that sort of stuff. So if someone takes $10 out of their wallet and hands it to me just for, a couple hours of audio that they're getting from me every week or every 2 weeks or every 4, it means a lot. And it's, never overlooked, never taken for granted, ever. I don't subscribe to anything, let alone, donating to podcasts. It's the last thing I do. But then again, to be fair, I don't listen to any other podcasts other than my own. I don't know. Anyway, I don't think I have much more to say. I just want to say again, thank you to everyone that supported us. And again, if you know anyone that has a story that you feel deserves a platform for an hour or two, by all means, flick them the details, get at us on Instagram, dukeleverage@gmail.com, wherever it is, flick me a text, flick me an email, flick me a DM, whatever it is. And, I'll see that I'll look at getting him on here, in here. A lot of the people from this year, there were multiple people that have come in that I'd either never met before personally or had only known of that have come in to tell their story. A lot of people that I met that were new faces to me as well. I do ask everyone to have a safe holiday period, however you're spending it. If you could, like our shit online, like the post that I put up. You put up with us, so at least, at least you can do is like. It really goes a long way. If you listen to this podcast and you get more than a few episodes in, the only thing I ask, there are a lot of people, I think about it, man. The one thing I haven't done is shamelessly promote this thing. Every time I watch a YouTube video, there's always, before it gets into the content, there's always a disclaimer. Please like, share, follow, subscribe to our channel, hit the notifications button so you get the alerts when we come up with something new, blah, 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 blah. I only just started putting disclaimers in the middle of each episode, just reminding people to like, share, follow, and subscribe. And we're 8 years in. It's actually insane. And I think with the IP now, with the rebrand of the Duke Leverage Show, I feel that it's going to be a lot easier to promote it. I've always been pretty open and shameless about talking about this thing with people, but it is actually a thing. And we're coming up to nearly 200 episodes. And I really should be pushing it a lot harder to the point where, the 500 odd that it costs me every month just to have the studio, let alone the man hours that I have to put in, I'm not going to be noticing it that much anymore. And that ultimately would be a dream. But I'm still happy to do this just because it's a lot of fun. And for nothing more but, just listening back to conversations I've had with good friends of mine, and interesting individuals that have gone through a lot or have something to say. That in itself is worth it. It's a form of archiving. I haven't got a family photo album. I don't have kids that are going to carry on my stupid stories. So if Duke Leverage is it, then I've got to keep feeding the beast. At least now things are on Spotify, so I don't actually have to pay for it the way I have to pay for SoundCloud every month. Things on Spotify, it'll last forever. So when the aliens come, they wipe everyone off the face of the earth and they tune into the Duke Leverage show and hear me bitch about the price of A2 milk. It'll all be worth it. They'll be able to document our history through it. Yeah. I'll be going away tomorrow. Obviously, I'm going to put this up tomorrow, so today. And they'll secretly controlled time. Oh, God. So, yeah, the low-hanging fruit still has 2 episodes at this point to go. Well, not 2 episodes, but 2 parts. They're all edited to go. I'm going to get this one done today, and that'll see us through to the end of the year. And hopefully when I get back, I can get the first episode out pretty quickly. But yeah, everyone stay safe, whatever you end up doing. And yeah, the biggest favor, the biggest compliment you could ever do is tell one other person about this. People reshare the stupidest shit on social media. But, you know, could tell me when they see me, man, I really love this episode, really love that episode. I'm like, really? I didn't even know you listen to this shit. But you'd never know it, you know, because they'd never share it on their socials, which is sort of kind of strange. I actually don't understand that. It's really weird. Because I don't know. It's very, very strange. I don't know. Anyway, enough rambling. Stay safe. We'll see you in 2025. And, yeah. Smoke crack.
Hold up.